Hello and welcome. I'm Albert Liu for Sprott Media, and I'm here today with Rick Rule of Sprott U.S. Holdings. Rick, thanks for joining me today. How are you?
I'm fine, Albert. Always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
I want to get together with you to discuss a topic that you feel is very important right now, prospect generators. But before I do that, I want to remind people that we are in the lead up to our 2018 Vancouver Natural Resource Symposium in Vancouver. And I was hoping you could say a few words about that to get started, Rick.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, one of the reasons why we're doing this interview today about prospect generators is because that will be the theme of my general session speech in Vancouver. I very much feel like we're heading into an exploration market, a market that will in fact reward explorers and reward successful explorers extravagantly. In my experience over 30 years, the prospect generators have been the most intelligent way to play exploration, and so they'll be a focus of this year's conference. The conference, as you know, Albert, and as many of the listeners to this will know, has been ongoing for more than 25 years, started by Agora and then of course picked up by Sprott about 5 years ago. My suspicion is that this year's will be the biggest and best of the conferences that we've had so far, which is a fairly extravagant boast, because the truth is that the conference has been growing both in quality and attendance every year. But I do believe that this year will be the best conference that we've put on.
So you can find out more about that at sprottconference.com. Now let's get to the discussion, because I think this is a very interesting discussion, and I think that this video will be of interest both to people who are new to our industry as well as people who have established themselves as investors and speculators. We're talking about prospect generators, and Doug once, it was 2 years ago at our conference, described mining as a 19th century choo-choo train business, and I thought that was funny. It was, of course, tongue-in-cheek. Certainly, compared to some of the things you see going on now in the economy, it seems that way, but there's been a lot of innovation, both technologically in terms of the business model. So can you first start by telling us what is a prospect generator? How does the model work?
Sure, and I think your lead-in is highly intelligent. People look at the mineral exploration business as an asset-intensive business. Pardon me, but in truth it's not. It's a knowledge business. I learned in university that about 1 in 3,000 mineralized anomalies becomes a mine. And the consequence of that is that if you think about any individual exploration project, they have a 1 in 3,000 chance of being a success, which hardly makes them assets. The truth is that you need to look at exploration businesses like you'd look at any other technology-intensive business. They're really knowledge businesses, and the value in an early-stage exploration company is more in the intellectual capital of the people at hand than they are at the properties at hand. The prospect generator business methodology takes this into account, because a prospect generator's method of doing business is to assemble a team with lots of intellectual capital in a specialty where that expertise is recognized by the rest of the market. Developing exploration thesis about certain pieces of ground based on the technical and or commercial expertise of the team at hand, and then joint venturing out the heavy lifting of exploration to other exploration groups, so that your interest in the property gets diluted, but your interest in the knowledge team, the intellectual capital, gets diluted less. If you think of these businesses, Albert, in the context of the businesses that you grew up in, technology businesses, semiconductor businesses, software businesses, biotechnology, where you understand that the process of creating value is by answering unanswered questions, you will first of all understand the exploration business better than your competitors, and you'll understand the essence of prospect generation, which is to develop a thesis around a property, propose the method to test the thesis, get third-party funding to test the thesis, quote, rinse, wash, repeat.
And on the risk versus reward spectrum, where would you put prospect generators among the other types of resource companies that people could invest in? I assume these are all adjusted accordingly.
Yes, let's begin with the caveat that exploration is a high-risk, high-reward business. There have been several times in my career where I have been rewarded in exploration with hundredfold, not 100%, hundredfold escalations in value. That type of reward necessitates extraordinary risk. And so it's important at the beginning of answering your question, Albert, that we establish that the exploration business is really, truly spectacularly risky. Prospect generation is less risky. Think of it as attempting to acquire a bag of lottery tickets, or rather partial lottery tickets, where somebody else paid for most of the ticket. The normal recipe in exploration is that a team focuses on one property and attempts to develop the property on balance sheet, keeping 100% interest in that property. If you remember the fact that we led off this interview with, which is that a mineral exploration project has a 1 in 3,000 chance of success, your normal expectation of risk to reward in exploration is that you're taking a 1 in 3,000 chance to get a 10-to-1 return. This makes the California lottery look like a really good deal. In prospect generation, by contrast, the idea is that a good team generates 4 or 5 projects a year, which it then farms out to other people. So rather than having all your eggs in one basket, that basket being a particular property, in truth, the idea is over 5 years that your team will have exposed you to 25 or 30 exploration projects. First of all, vetted by somebody else, and secondly, more importantly probably, funded by somebody else. So you take an extremely risky business and you make it less risky, but not non-risk.
I'm wondering how this business model came to be. Was it the case of some very intelligent, I guess, people in a more integrated business decided to strike out on their own? Was it a consulting arrangement? Do you have any thoughts on that or experience?
The term prospect generator, as it relates to mining, is attributed falsely to me. I'm the one who popularized it in mining. This is a term that was well known and well regarded, and a business plan that was well known and well regarded in oil and gas exploration in the United States, where geologists or consultants or landmen would develop an exploration thesis about a certain piece of terrain and then bring in third parties to explore it. It's become increasingly popular both in oil and gas and mining as financial types, people like me, have come to run mining and oil and gas companies rather than technical types. Increasingly, as financial people come to run these businesses, the vagaries of exploration and the very long front ends of exploration have caused exploration to be de-emphasized and in fact outsourced to smaller, more nimble outfits. Again, very much as you would see in technology. Here in San Diego, there's probably 200 life science firms and probably 100 wireless firms that are in effect prospect generators. They're developing algorithms in the case of wireless firms, or molecules in the sense of biotechnology, and then looking to transfer the technology in return for a payment to companies that are much more mature in those industries. If you look at what's happening in technology, and if you look at what's happening really across the economy with outsourcing, you'll come to understand why prospect generation is becoming such an important mode for exploration finance.
Let's move on, Rick, from my curiosities to the viewers' curiosities, which I think they're probably wondering, what is the advantage to the investor?
I'll tell you, there's a couple advantages. The first is it's simply more capital efficient. If you understand that exploration is a knowledge business rather than a capital-intensive business, and that the value in small companies is in the intellectual rather than the physical capital, then understanding that you dilute yourself at the property level and not have to issue shares at the company level to maintain an interest in a property really comes to the fore. The second thing is that, and this is something that's really worked to my advantage over time, Albert. Many times in my life, I have hired third-party technical professionals to vet a property for me. they've tried to figure out what I've wanted to hear, so I'll hire them again, and then they send me a bill, which is fine. With a prospect generator, the third party who vets the project doesn't send me a bill. He or she, in fact, invests their own money in the project, which makes the vetting much more thorough. You know, if you see a sell-side research report from a brokerage firm, that brokerage firm has an interest in having you like the outcome so that you buy the stock. I'm not trying to say that sell-side research is necessarily bad. What I'm trying to say, however, is that if Gold Corp is looking at a gold project and proposing to spend $5 million on it, the process by which they vet the project is different, and I would suggest much more thorough than a consultant who's going to send me a $5,000 bill or a sell-side analyst who's going to try and get a commission from me by parking a financing with me. The process is better and more honest.
I think the analogy with the sell-side research is bang on. I think research or studies have shown that they're good providers of industry knowledge and specific information, but not so good at picking stocks. So commodities, let's say the economy itself is cyclical. Equities, commodities are cyclical. Asset-intensive businesses, capital-intensive businesses tend to be cyclical. This is not a capital-intensive business, but because it's attached to one that is, I would imagine that this is cyclical as well.
It is cyclical, and that probably has to do with why I see this as a particularly advantageous time to be around the prospect generators. The truth is, Albert, that as an industry and as a society, really, we have underemphasized exploration for about 20 years. We have underallocated capital and we have misallocated capital to the space. The last real boom that we saw in generative exploration worldwide was in fact in the 1980s and 1990s. And as an industry, we have substantially underinvested in generative exploration for about 20 years. The exploration that has taken place increasingly in junior capital markets rather than on balance sheet with large mining companies, which has led to a different problem, which is misinvestment. People investing money to drill a drill hole that moves a stock from 25 cents to 55 cents, as opposed to expenditures that are really truly oriented at making discoveries. I have nothing against a stock that goes from 25 cents to 55 cents, truth be told. Doubles are good. But if you're going to take the risks that you take month in, month out in exploration, the way that the economics work is occasionally you have to get a 10-bagger, that is 1,000% return, or a 15-bagger to leaven the effects of risk throughout your portfolio. So the truth is that the industry has both underinvested and misinvested in exploration for 20 years. And the chickens are really truly coming home to roost. I've had representatives of some of the largest mining companies in the world come to me in the last 3 months and say, Rick, what you've been saying with regards to this, that is the dearth of exploration, is true. Our exploration and development larders are empty. We are understaffed in exploration. We have a directive from our management team to increase our generative exploration budgets. Any ideas you have would be welcome. So the truth is that we need to correct this underinvestment and misinvestment that we have seen in exploration. And history teaches me that the most efficient way for investors to participate in that process is by developing a portfolio of publicly traded prospect generators.
You would expect that when your thesis is confirmed or people feel like it is about to be confirmed, that the values of these companies will go sky high and there will be more of them formed. We had an event recently in just general equities where we saw the market anticipating inflation. They got something that looked like confirmation of that in either a PCE or a jobs, and then that triggered a move. What would be the analogous catalyst here?
The most important catalyst in our market, Albert, is discovery and the insane amounts of money made in relatively short periods of time in discovery. Looking back in prospect generations, of course I'll hit the high points. thinking about things like Francisco Gold, where, as I recall, we started off with the stock at 80 cents. I believe, if my memory serves me well, we sold it off to Glamis for $15 or $16, and Glamis promptly doubled as a consequence of the acquisition. A more dramatic example would probably be Arequipa Resources, which went from 30 cents to $30, if my memory serves me well, in 19 months. The truth is that prospect generation is the most reliable way of participating in a discovery. And discoveries generate the most outrageous investment returns that are possible in the mining business. And the truth is, if investors, or more properly speculators, build a portfolio of 5 or 6 prospect generators, it's important not to have one, it's important to build a portfolio. You are exposing yourself to 25 or 30 or 35 exploration projects a year funded by other people's money. The probability is, in 3 years or 4 years, it may happen in your first year, you're going to participate in a discovery. And when you participate in a discovery, the possibilities of 10 to 1 returns, 15 to 1 returns, 50 to 1 returns are in fact fairly high. And it is those discoveries and the subsequent takeovers that add both liquidity and cash to the market and, of course, validate the thesis.
Thanks, Rick. Let's wrap it up here, but I want to remind the viewers, as we mentioned at the beginning of this video, that the Vancouver conference takes place July 17th. Go to sprottconference.com for more information. Rick, you're going to be doing a general session presentation on prospect generators. There's going to be a lot of qualified companies as well exhibiting with us. So please go there, and also in the notes to this video, we're going to leave a link, sign up link to a webinar that Rick and I will be hosting on this topic. So please be sure to check that out, Rick. It's always a pleasure, always learn something. I know the viewers appreciate it, so thank you for your time.
A pleasure, Albert. We should mention that webinar will talk about specific companies. It'll be highly actionable.
Thank you very much, and let's do this again soon.
I look forward to it.